Intelligence officers are trained to gain insights from the smallest details. At Watches of Espionage, we often analyze timepieces worn by world leaders, including Kim Jong-un's IWC and Vladimir Putin's intriguing habit of removing his watch during interviews. In this video, we'll discuss the watches worn by current U.S. presidential candidates and serving presidents from the past 40 years. As we often say, a watch is never just a watch. Watches of Espionage is curated by a former CIA case officer with a passion for timepieces. On the WOE YouTube channel, we explore the intersection of watches and the military, intelligence, and national security. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be informed when we release new videos. You can tell a lot about a person by their wristwatch. This is especially true of politicians who meticulously curate their appearance. Analyzing their timepieces can provide insight into how they view themselves and want to be perceived by their constituents. On the WOE Dispatch, we've written about CIA analysis of foreign leaders' timepieces. We have also analyzed watches worn during the conflict in Ukraine and even the watches favored by the leaders of prominent terrorist organizations. For CIA analysts, a leader's watch provides unique insight into their personality and what they are trying to telegraph to the population in the broader world. Rolex has long crowned itself as the watch worn by men, now people, who guide the destinies of the world, and the lesser-known Vulcain cricket is referred to as the watch of presidents, having been worn by Harry S. Truman. In reality, no one brand can claim this title, and presidents have worn watches from the attainable Timex Ironman to Patek Philippe. Before delving into the watches most commonly associated with U.S. presidents over the past few decades, let's take a closer look at the watches worn by the current U.S. presidential candidates. To be clear, WOE is an apolitical platform. Our analysis of political figures and their watches is presented as an informational exercise not intended to align with one side or the other. If you are triggered by seeing a picture or watch of a president you disagree with, take off your shoes and go outside. Feel the grass between your toes. The hipsters call this earthing or grounding, and it's the second most effective method hippies use to relax. To start, let's unpack the watches worn by former president and current Republican candidate Donald Trump, a man who is no stranger to luxury timepieces. The last time we discussed the former president was after the assassination attempt, when a U.S. Secret Service agent was seen wearing a special unit-specific version of the Omega Seamaster. Forever associated with wealth, Trump has been spotted wearing a Patek Philippe Ellipse, a Rolex Day-Date, and a square-case Vacheron Constantin, all of which are solid gold. As someone who portrays himself as a successful New York real estate mogul, these watches are spot on. Solid gold watches from some of Switzerland's biggest names are exactly the type of timepieces you expect a real estate mogul to wear on the golf course in Palm Beach or around a dinner table in Mar-a-Lago. Moving across the aisle to Kamala Harris, the Democratic U.S. presidential candidate and current vice president has been spotted wearing a pair of Cartier watches, with both designs stemming from Cartier's more recent history. A Swiss luxury brand dating back to 1847 and closely associated with jewelry, Cartier is consistently popular with women and sits in the coveted #2 position behind Rolex in terms of Swiss watch industry turnover, earning an estimated 3.1 billion Swiss francs in 2023, which is around 3.7 billion freedom dollars. What can we learn from Kamala Harris's Ballon Bleu, a 33mm steel and gold watch that will set you back around $9,000. The Ballon Bleu, introduced in 2007, is one of the more modern references in the brand's extensive catalog of classics. The message here is simple: to present Harris as a classy yet modern and progressive leader with a particular appeal to women voters. Harris's running mate is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who has been the subject of no shortage of scrutiny in recent months, with many calling into question his claims about past military service. Setting that aside, Walz has been spotted on numerous occasions wearing a Hamilton khaki Field Murph, a production model inspired by a prop watch used in 2014's Interstellar. The Democrat campaign has portrayed Walls as America's Midwestern dad, and such a persona should wear a Hamilton. The vintage military-style field watch makes sense given Walls' background and also avoids the appearance of luxury, coming in at around $1,000. Trump's running mate is J.D. Vance, a United States Senator from Ohio and a Marine Corps veteran. In many recent appearances, Vance doesn't wear a watch at all, but he has been seen regularly wearing an Apple Watch. We have discussed the counterintelligence risks of smartwatches, but what conclusions can we draw from a young politician wearing an Apple Watch? As is well documented in his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, Vance presents himself as a rags-to-riches story, growing up in a low-income household in Ohio and working his way through the Marine Corps and Yale Law School before ultimately becoming a successful venture capitalist. The Apple Watch is a clear sign of youth and tech savviness, something that many would say is lacking in senior levels of elected U.S. officials. Moving chronologically back through U.S. history, we then have President Joe Biden, a president who can claim to be a real watch nerd, with a collection including an Omega Seamaster Professional, a Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch, and a more modest Seiko chronograph. When Biden was inaugurated in January 2021, he skipped his Omegas and opted for a then brand new blue dial steel Rolex Datejust on a Jubilee bracelet, a Christmas gift from the First Lady. It's interesting to note that while Rolex certainly has deep roots with U.S. presidents, before Biden and Trump, there was a decades-long period of presidents leaning into the so-called plain folk propaganda methodology, a technique presenting the president as someone relatable, someone you would want to have a beer with, someone like you. 44th President Barack Obama was a great example. Serving 2 terms, President Obama is most often associated with a York Gray Secret Service chronograph, which was reportedly a birthday gift from his protective detail before his inauguration. The quartz chronograph's black dial has a U.S. Secret Service insignia at the 12 o'clock position. We have previously detailed watch culture in the Secret Service on the WOE Dispatch, and this watch is available in the White House gift shop for $450. Since leaving the Oval Office, Obama has been seen wearing a Rolex Cellini, a far less modest watch. Also leaning into the plain folk ideology was President George W. Bush, who wore a modest Timex Indiglo with an American flag at 12 o'clock on the dial while in office. As a president known for his punctuality, it was a utilitarian timepiece that looked the part without breaking the bank. In fact, you can still buy a gold-tone version of the watch today directly from the George W. Bush Presidential Center for a paltry $60. It's important to note that President Bush came from a political dynasty and likely could afford any watch he wanted. Again, these choices are rarely made in a vacuum. Going way back in time, we have one of the most celebrated president watch collectors, William J. Clinton. While he found fame for other, more notorious reasons, President Clinton is also known for his extensive watch collection that includes brands like Panerai, Zenith, JLC, and even A. Lange and Söhne. But during his presidency, Clinton deferred to the more modest digital timepiece, the Timex Ironman Triathlon. Plain folk once again. In stark contrast to the formal blue and black suits, the simple plastic timepiece became a trend in Washington, with many politicians on both sides of the aisle in the 1990s and 2000s. In post-government life, Clinton has been photographed wearing everything from Audemars Piguet to a limited edition JLC master compressor alarm, Navy SEALs. The first President Bush has a long history with the CIA and the world of intelligence, including as Director of Central Intelligence in 1976. He was also a president with an extensive watch collection, owning a pair of Patek Philippe models that included a pink gold automatic perpetual calendar reference 3940, as well as a 1968 Calatrava reference 3445 that he likely wore as Director of CIA. Both were later sold at auction by Christie's for $81,250 and $62,500 respectively. Finally, we have Ronald Reagan, the celebrated actor and politician who ascended to the commander-in-chief position in 1981. President Reagan wore a Rolex Datejust, or Air King, and was a quintessential Rolex man. Even more interestingly, he appeared to wear the watch with some frequency on the inside of his wrist. While both watches are traditionally encountered on the Jubilee bracelet, Reagan appears to have replaced it with an aftermarket bracelet later in life. At Watches of Espionage, we believe in wearing watches within the use your tools ethos, and these presidents are no different. But the tool in this case is communication, subtly sharing a message with potential voters and donors with the watches on their wrists. Whether it's Bush's Timex, a solid gold Patek or Vacheron on the wrist of Donald Trump, or a Cartier on Kamala Harris, once again, a watch is never just a watch. Drop a comment down below to let us know what you think of the watches worn by US presidents. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment, and hit the bell icon to be informed when we release new videos. For even more, check out our website, watchesofespionage.com, for more content, as well as our collection of watch straps and other purpose-built tools designed for our community. Until next time, happy hunting.